Okay, in this video we're going to look at how you sketch a rectangular hyperbola using a translation technique. So what we're asked to do in this case is draw the graph of y equals 6 over x take 2 plus 3. The first thing you want to recognise here is that our basic form is our x over 6. So what that means is the graph of y equals 6 over x take 2 plus 3 is a translation, which means you've moved the graph up or down or across or both. It's a translation of 6 over x. So the first thing we want to do is have a look at what that graph looks like. Okay, so this is what our graph of y equals 6 over x looks like. We'll notice that we have got a horizontal asymptote at y equals 0 and a vertical asymptote at x equals 0. So what that means is our graph here is going to get closer and closer and closer to those asymptotes, but not actually meet them. So as we said, we've got our vertical asymptote at x equals 0 and our horizontal at y equals 0. Now if we have a look at the general form here, so we've got y is equal to a over x take 6, x take h plus k. So we can see in this case that a is equal to 6. Now if we're just looking at the situation of y is equal to 6 over x, what we actually should take note of is that that's x take 0 plus 0. So h is equal to 0 and k is equal to 0. The reason I'm pointing this out is because the value of h is going to give us our vertical asymptote. So that's our asymptote where x equals h. So for this situation here, where h is equal to 0, we end up with x equals 0 as an asymptote. And then if we have a look at the value of k, that's going to give us our horizontal asymptote. So y is equal to k. So if we look at our basic one of y equals 6 over x, k is equal to 0. So that's why we've got a horizontal asymptote of y equals 0. So if we have a look at our equation here, we've got x take 2 and we've got plus 3. So what that means is that h is equal to 2. Now keeping in mind we've got a negative 2 here, but the general expression has a negative sign there. So h is opposite in sign as what you see on the bottom line there. And our k value is 3. So we can see plus k plus 3. So our k value is going to be the same sign as what we see there. So what that tells us is that we have got a vertical asymptote of x equals 2 and a horizontal asymptote of y equals 3. So we need to draw them in first of all. Okay, so you can see on this graph we've got our asymptote. So we've got an asymptote here at, we'll label that as x equals 2 and our horizontal as y equals 3. Now when you draw these in, you want to draw them in as like a faint or dotted line, but also make sure you label them for your value. So we're basically drawing the same shape graph for y equals 6 over x, but instead of having these curves sketched in between our asymptotes at 0 and 0, we're going to have them sketched in at the asymptotes of 2 and 3 here. So when we sketch that in, we've now got our curve approaching both of those asymptotes. Something you need to pay attention to though, because now that our asymptotes have moved, our graph is actually cutting the axis, and we could see that straight away by those asymptotes are now up there. We can see that it's going to have to cut potentially both axes, but in this case it appears to go through the origin. You don't know that when you're sketching it, so it's making a judgment as to, you know, how far out is this line when you sketch it. Now to do that, you have to check where your intercepts are going to be. So what we're going to do is check if this does actually cut the y-axis when x equals 0. So we'll do that by substituting x equals 0 into the expression and see if y equals 0 as well. Okay, so we can see there that y equals 0, so that checks out. So we know that we've got our line at the right spots cutting the y-axis at x equals 0. So what we've just looked at here is how y equals 6 over x take 2 plus 3 is actually a translation of y equals 6 by 2, 3. So what that means is we've moved this graph here 2 units to the left and 3 units up. And the way we do that to sketch it is we move our asymptotes across 2, up 3, and then sketch in that same shaped graph.